All right. Hello, hello. Thank you for coming back to Jetta's Digest podcast. I'm your host, Geta Barbu, gut health practitioner and certified nutritionist specializing in chronic illness. Um, so we're recording this in like mid-December, but this is going to be aired in January, one of the first episodes that's going to be in 2025, right? And me and my guest, who we met through a business program through Diana Davis. So shout out to Diana Davis because I think she
Always.
saved always. I think she saved our mental health in our relationship with our business. She just did so much for us than I think she even realizes. So props to her. But her program, Camp Clarity, brought me and Krishna together, who's our guest today. And we are convinced that we are actually soul sisters, and I hope you guys see why that is. There's definitely like if there is like she's like the yin to my yang, and then vice versa as well. So it's a very fun friendship, and she also did my HTMA in 3 month support, and that helped her in a big way. And we got into talking about, we just talk. We just were like, la, 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 like turkeys with their heads cut off. And one of our and one of the things that we were talking about is doing the right hard thing coming into 2025. I know a lot of people had a very difficult and very like traumatizing 2024 for obviously various reasons, but I feel like for everybody doesn't matter your economic status, doesn't matter who you are, what you're doing. I feel like a lot of people had a lot of events happen in 2024 and a lot of
Yeah.
shifts have happened in people's lives. And so we were talking about that, and I was like, Krishna, let's just press record on this conversation because this is so good. I want the whole world to hear this. So Krishna, tell us a little bit about what you do and how you do things because you do things very differently. You are in like the health and wellness space, but you do it very differently. And again, keep this in mind. Everybody that is a guest on this podcast, I would literally tell you, like, if you come to me and you're like, hey, I need XYZ, I'd be like, Krishna's your girl, right? Like, okay, so yeah, tell us.
Yes, absolutely. Oh my God. Well, first of all, thank you for having me again. And I love talking to Jetta all the time. She's just definitely my soul sister. My
I
name
love
is
talking
Krishna
to you.
Kayasa. I am the owner of Serenade My Soul. I'm probably like a creative healing guide at this point. I love bringing art into the healing space. And right now, my specific focus is journaling and inner child connection. I wouldn't even say wounds because not everything is necessarily like a wound or a hurt, but there's so much to like uncover and heal from, and just being gentle with ourselves as we are healing. I'm definitely trying to, I don't want to say decolonize, but not make it corporate of like it's a regimented like da da da, you have to do this to, it's a lot more, it's softer. I'll be dead ass. Like it is softer because
Yes,
I
soft,
am
soft healing era, right?
absolutely, absolutely. So, yeah, I have a bunch of journaling prompts that I'll be sending out in 2025, and I'm working on potentially like a little creative group program. We're also doing the artist way, which is really fun. And then I sell journals. I've painted and designed the covers, and I have some unique journals that are like for cycle syncing, and I'm working on a few others for partnership connection, where I've designed all the pages on the inside. So a lot of fun, exciting things happening just to support people
Yeah.
healing and loving
Yeah.
and living deeply. I think that's another thing. I think I see so many people just like on autopilot, and I
Mm,
just want to shake them and be like, hey, like, did you see the stars?
yes.
Like,
Yes.
did you see that? Like, did you see that? Like, isn't that crazy cool?
Yes.
Yeah.
Like if a good song is in your car
Oh,
and you're
absolutely.
like, I'm sitting and listening to this entire song.
Oh yeah. I send Jenna so many songs. I'm like, girl, this is the vibe today.
Yes. And I'm over here snapping my fingers. I'm like, hey.
I sent you a
Uh,
song for this podcast.
yes.
We
Yes.
can put that in the
Yes.
link notes.
Yes. Yeah, this is a really like I said, it is definitely a soft healing era that I think the world feels.
Hmm.
Um, there's there's a reel that I saw recently that was like, "Hey, did you see the war?" And they're like, "Which one?" Right? "Hey, did you see this artist get arrested?" "Yeah, which one?" Like so on
Hmm.
and so forth, right? There's so much happening in the world. And this morning, Krishna, I was actually listening to um, it was a 30-minute, what is it called in English? This is a very thing. I forget what
Like a
things are called in
sermon?
English. When you do like when after church the priest reads from the Bible. What is that called?
Yeah, it's a
Sermon.
sermon.
Sermon. Thank you.
Yeah. I
Sermon.
read your mind. I didn't even know you were talking about. I was just like, it's got to be a sermon.
Yes,
It's been
you
on a
did.
kick lately.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So I was actually listening to a 30-minute sermon by this Romanian priest from Cluj, which is in northern Romania, which is kind of the area where I was born in, about like an hour and a half away from where I was born. And he was actually talking about how the biggest war that we will ever endure in our entire life, like you literally have to die to get rid of this, is this constant war of over information,
Mm.
undernourishment, and doing things that are on autopilot.
Oh, well, look at that.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
thought he was gonna say it was the war with yourself, but that's pretty good too.
Yeah, so he was talking so much about like this is the common war. Like
Yeah.
this is it right now. Like it's definitely like spiritual warfare and things like that, but it's
Mhm.
also the spiritual warfare is like the nucleus, but like
Right.
many people, how do we get to that nucleus, right? So
Yeah.
then we think about, well, yeah, but I do need, and this is one of my favorite things is what is self-care? What is that? What does it look like? And whenever I get asked that question personally, and you and I have had this conversation, I'm like,
Mhm.
whatever needs to be prioritized that day, that's self-care.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's not me. Sometimes it's my
Right.
kids, and that's self-care.
Absolutely.
You want to take,
Yeah. I mean, when you say what is self-care, it's doing the hard thing. Self-care is doing the hard thing. Sometimes taking time out for yourself is hard. Do it, right? But managing your finances,
yes, do it.
but you're gonna feel so much better after you do it, right?
Yes.
Um, Before I signed up for HTMA, I was telling Jetta, I was like, yeah, okay, I can go get a bunch of supplements and start popping pills and go to the doctor and be put on whatever regimen they're gonna give me. And it will be hard in the sense of I'm gonna have side effects.
Hmm.
I'm gonna not know if it's working properly
Yep. Correct.
and the financial cost.
Yep.
I don't think supplements are cheap. I'm sorry. Groceries are kind of expensive right now, like all the things, right? So it's a hard thing to do, but the right hard thing is to sit down and learn about my body, learn about my gut, talk to someone who specializes in this, talk to someone I trust
Yep.
to be like, hey, okay, this is a test we do. And yeah, okay, there's a financial investment,
Hmm.
but I could be popping pills forever, or I could do this thing, be dedicated to it, learn about my body and what is happening, and be more in control of my life, right?
Yeah.
So last week, last week an uncle passed away of mine, and I grew up with him. We were pretty close, and in the stress of trying to figure out like, okay, who in my family is gonna go, when are we gonna go, how, all the things, I was skipping meals, and then my gut, like my stomach was turning. Like anytime I did eat, it was turning.
Yep.
And before, it would have been like, oh, that thing that I ate didn't settle well, or this didn't settle well. But after working with Jetta, it was like, one, I haven't eaten enough. Two, I haven't been eating on time. And three, the meals that I was eating, they weren't meals. They were not balanced. And as soon as I clocked that and I went and got some hummus out of my fridge and got some peanut butter and just like ate like a few spoons, and my gut just immediately was like, thank you for taking care of me.
Yeah.
Like,
You can have cheese now. You can
yeah,
have these things. Yeah.
exactly. Right.
Yeah.
And then like even later on, I was like craving something really sweet and I didn't feel like baking anything because sometimes I'm lazy and that is my self-care. I put a bunch of
Yes.
peanut butter and chocolate chips on a celery stick and I was just munching away.
Yeah.
Like my
Yeah.
3 p.m. snack.
Yeah.
But then when I flew across country, just with the time difference and flying now, I'm 37, like I don't bounce back like I used to hop in time zones. And
Right.
so, and then also with like seeing family and like the stress of seeing, and this is some of them I haven't seen since my wedding 10 years
Ooh.
ago.
Ooh. Yeah.
So just like, okay, what are they going to say? And what are they going to do? And what questions are they going to ask? And everyone's mourning. And I don't know if it's similar for you, but like the elders have a specific way, like you're not supposed to do this, that, third. I bring humor into everything because that's just how I cope with life.
Yes. But it is also so healing, Krishna. See, that's the thing that like I want you just as a human on this earth side, on this beautiful, beautiful earth, is that we are the autopilot, when we get out of that autopilot and when I love the how you said when I clocked in. I love that. When
Yeah.
you, like clock in on that and who you are as a person, I think the things that we love are now echoed, and the
Mhm.
things that we really, really don't like are now farther away from us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's like a safe chamber,
Yes.
because I like when I was there, I was making different choices in my eating. Like I was
Hmm.
picking up fruit in the morning because the time zone messed me up. So I'd be up at 3 a.m.
Yeah.
Everyone's sleeping. And so it was great because I could sit on my own, I could journal, I could process my grief on my own. And I'm hungry because it's 6 a.m.
Yeah.
my time technically, right? So I'm like, okay, let me
Yeah.
have fruit, let me have this because I don't eat a lot of authentic Indian food, homemade Indian food in my home, and that's what a lot was being served. And I was like, okay, I need to balance this out.
Yep.
Um, so yeah, I was stressed and tired and grieving, but my stomach did not give me any problems this weekend. I didn't have added issues or stress of like gut health, hunger. And
Hmm.
because I ate, I do believe I was able to sleep as well as I did given the circumstances. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's just been
Yeah.
so powerful. I mean, sometimes I'm just like, man, that was only 3 months and I've learned so much. And
Hmm.
also, I didn't even realize I was learning so much. Like, I think a month in, I was like, what am I doing? Like, am I even doing this right? Like, is this all we're
You did
doing?
say this. You did say
Yeah.
this. And this is a common thing.
Yeah.
Like
Because I
that's
was
why
like, this
like
is
when I
so
responded
easy.
to that, I was like so nonchalant. Because I'm telling you, I mean it with my whole heart. Yesterday, I had a kickoff call with someone that was like, "What do you mean you don't do parasite cleanses? What do you mean you don't do detoxes? What do you mean you don't?" To be fair, she's brand new to my world.
Okay.
To be very fair. But that was something that she was like, "Well, I just, I've worked with other, nutritional practitioners or even like naturopath doctors, and things like that, and they've all told her to do these things, and now she feels worse than before. And I had told her, I was like, I just want you to know that a lot of the people that end up working with me, and they do, whether 6 or 3 months, it doesn't even matter. But they meet like the first like comment, if you will, is like, am I doing this correctly? Because this is too easy. And I'm like,
Yeah.
you're
Because we're
doing
so
it.
used to being marketed that we need to jump through all these hoops,
Hmm.
persevere, endure, overcome, win, right? And so it's like, okay, like I need to do like you're like amping up for like this battle of sorts. And then you
That's
work
what I'm
with,
talking about. That's the war.
yeah, and then you work with Jetta and you're just like, oh, I can just eat.
I can just
That's cool,
eat.
bro. Yeah, awesome. Oh, you want me to eat more? No problem.
Exactly. Exactly. Right. So, how does that evolutionize or just really become, how do we go from caterpillar to butterfly in that instant by doing the hard thing? What was the hard thing just lately? So right now we're talking about something that you had just endured, right? Like for the listeners, so when Krishna was talking about going across the US is because she flew to be at that funeral to
Yeah.
someone that was a family member that she grew up with and that was very, very close to her. A lot of your child memories were with this uncle,
Yeah.
right? So that's definitely 100%. There are things there that immediately is like, okay, grief. Grief causes a lot of suppressed immune system. When you come
Mhm.
back, Krishna, you just came back. You took a red eye last night, right? You just came
Yeah.
back.
I landed this morning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's definitely fatigue, but like if you feel in the next week, if you feel like your immune system is weakened, if you feel maybe stuffy nose or runny nose or maybe like some itchy throat stuff, that's where grief comes into play, right?
Mhm.
Because that's what grief is. There's all these emotions that we feel on that deep level.
Right.
I really feel that if this is how I explained it to my kids, is that when we feel when we feel that our heart is broken, when we feel very sad, when we
Yeah.
feel this heaviness in our chest, our body gives it a big hug, but in order to give the heart a big hug, it needs extra stuff.
Hmm.
And sometimes that's very hard to do. It's very hard to just be like, okay, I'm gonna get up and, from playing and painting and, doing the things that we do during the morning time. Sometimes it's hard to be like, okay, now we're gonna have lunch. And it's like, what?
Yeah.
So for a child, it's hard. For adults, it's even harder,
Right.
right? So like
Yeah.
getting up to just like making the time and the space to eat, I think that's one of the things that as adults in this very go, go, go autopilot world, I
Hmm.
think that's a very hard thing. I know that's been a hard thing for the past years. And after kids, now I had to pivot on what that looked like. So
Right.
we are within ourselves switching, changing, pivoting, right?
Right.
Was that hard for you doing that? What was like the right hard thing for you in the things that you have just now experienced and why the things that you came back and you're like, wow, like that was my body did not react as much as it would have because I've been in the situation in the past and here's what
Yeah.
happened, right?
Oh, absolutely. So I think journaling, journaling has
Hmm.
helped me a lot,
Hmm.
right? Like just processing and taking the time to clear my head and clear my thoughts and just having a safe space to say what I want to in the way that I want to, because there's no repercussions. And my handwriting is shit, so I dare someone to try to read it. You know what I mean? Like
I
I
dare.
can't even read it.
I actually, so I journal, right? You
Yeah.
know that I
Yeah.
journal, and you and I have had a conversation about some of like the journal entries, but I was sharing something with somebody else in the community, and she actually gave me a really big insight that I truly
Hmm.
did not realize until she said this. There are people that are afraid to journal because they don't feel safe. So you saying that is really big. I know that's going to hit home with someone. Is that
Oh,
like journaling
absolutely.
helps me process because I can say what I want to say, how I want to say it.
Oh, I have a side story for that. So my mom used to read my journal when I was a
Mm-hmm.
kid. And
Uh-huh.
so the not like it's been a 10-year journey to fall in love with the journaling.
Yeah.
Like I've seen like how powerful it is and I've just been like trying and I've kept at it. And I feel like in the last few years it's just really clicked.
Yep.
Um, but when I was a kid and I realized that my mom was reading my journal, I would write a page and then I would write over the same page.
Wow.
And so so it'd just be all on one page. And I would just write
Wow.
over into like for that whole session, I would just write over and over that same page. You can't read it. You can't read it either.
I'm mind
You-
blown at the strategy of that
Yeah. Yeah.
because that's something that my brain wouldn't do. I'd be like, oh my gosh, no, don't write over your words. Like,
Well, that's another
you
thing because
know,
I'm in a journaling group and we were talking
yeah.
about journaling and stuff like that. And I was like, people think about the Diary of Anne Frank and they think about
Mhm.
these other really famous published journals. And sometimes
Mm.
their ego is like, oh, what if someone wants to read our journal? And I'm like, no one wants to read your fucking journal.
Yeah.
Like, I love you.
Yeah.
There's so much content out there, good, bad, and garbage. The chances of someone wanting to read your specific journal is slim. Like, release that pressure of having to perform in your journal.
100%.
That is like the one place actually there should be many places, but that's definitely one place to start where you should not have to perform. And once I was able to really just like live in that, it was so beyond helpful. And so I was looking for my tickets, just back to your original question of doing the
Yeah.
right hard thing. I was looking at tickets and I'm like, okay, I can only be gone for so long. Tickets are stupid expensive. It's December. This is family.
Mhm.
Where's the line?
Mm.
Right. And then I also have been super inspired in my business lately. So I had a full day plan. Like my weeks are
Yes.
kind of booked right now because I'm just so excited for all the
Yes.
things. Um,
Also, this is what happens when you feel good as well.
yeah. Oh my God, when you feel good, everything
Yeah.
is just like, creatively flowing. It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's been a beautiful little phase of mine right now. I've enjoyed it.
Yep.
Um, so I got the tickets. I'm like, okay, I can, as a family, we can financially afford this. It's gonna be a red-eye flight. I need to sleep. I need to eat accordingly. Like this is how I can do it. And my lower back locks up a lot.
Mm.
I slept on a futon the first night. I was
Mm.
I slept on the floor a second night. We walked for 2 miles the third day, like booking it, and I was like
Yeah.
not in the right shoes, but my body, like I didn't have such a response that like made me down and out. Like I could
Mm.
still partake and be with everyone, be pleasant, not be cranky. Um, the red eye took a lot more out of me than I thought it was going to. And so when I landed, I took a nap and I was beyond exhausted and I started like really grieving when I got here. Um, I really wanted to hold space for my cousins.
Yeah.
Watching them bury their father was really hard. And that's their dad. So it was just like, keep it together, Krishna, like do what you need to do, right? But when I got home, I was like, all right, I can create. So I just napped and cried and I had to reschedule things and move things around to allow myself that space because my kids will be home in an hour and a half and I want to be present for them and I want to love on them, right? Like
Yeah.
that's the right hard thing. And before I would have felt guilty. I would have felt so much guilt of like, oh, you didn't do that thing. You're gonna fall behind. Those people are gonna think that you're a flake. Like all
You're the
these.
worst person ever.
Absolutely. But instead it was like, okay, I'm gonna reschedule and I'm gonna tell people my truth. Like, hey, I just got back from a funeral. I thought I was gonna be able to superwoman the shit out of this day, but I'm gonna go take a nap and a cry. And if someone responds in a way that shows me that they don't understand that, that's not necessarily someone I need to be around anyways. And if they do take that branch and receive it, it's an opportunity for deeper connection. Because
Mm.
everyone has experienced loss of some kind at some point, right?
Correct.
And
Correct.
so being in touch with myself allows me to better connect with other people on a more authentic level, not over the weather, the politics, for the lack of like, just I know how triggering that can be, or even sports. Like my
Hmm.
cousins are sports people. They were watching the football game and stuff because they're trying to bond with the family. And I was like so bored because I'm like, can we talk about, like, can we talk about deep stuff?
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Like when I meet people, I'm like, what's your
yeah.
favorite color? And they're like, blue. And then I'm like, so was your life traumatic?
Yeah.
Right? It's like that kind of thing,
Right.
Like,
I'm like that grayish tinge of blue, like right after a storm and the sun hasn't risen yet. Like that's my favorite. And they're just like, oh. I'm like, oh, okay. We're not about
oh, okay. You don't look at the sky like I do? What do you mean? Uh-huh. Uh-huh. So, real question,
hmm
because you had other things planned for today. And
Yeah.
before we pressed record, because this
Yeah.
is a lot about transparency, is a lot about being real, right?
Yeah.
Why was the right hard thing for you to do this episode? Because before we press record, I said, do you want to reschedule? And then
I
you
know.
said
I was like,
no.
I was like, I'm so tired, but this is the one thing. I have learned that if I can prioritize one big thing for myself, it makes me feel good.
Okay.
Like the imposter syndrome voices, luteal bitch of insecurity voice, everyone kind of simmers down. And also, we're soul sisters. Like talking to you is so healing. I was going to talk to you about this anyways. You know what I mean? So it was just
Yeah.
kind of like, yeah, let's do it. And it's so, I hate to say like it's so on brand because that feels so capitalistic, but I I am what I preach. Like if I'm not
Mhm.
doing it, I'm not gonna talk about it.
Mhm.
No.
Mhm.
If
Yep.
it's not something that I can like fully be like, hey, yes, da 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 da, um, then it just wouldn't feel authentic. And it just felt like I feel raw right now and it feels a good time to
Yeah.
share with people because loss is so prevalent and I'm getting to the age where people are losing their dads.
Yes.
And it's just wild to me. Like,
Yes.
because whenever I get around my aunts and uncles and my parents, I feel like a little kid. And I'm almost
Mhm.
near damn 40.
Mhm. Yep.
And I'm like, oh my God, they're dropping, you
Yep. You
know?
look at photos. This was the thing for me. You look at photos, you start looking at
Mhm.
photos from when you were like a teen, and you're
Yeah.
like, that person isn't here anymore. That person has passed away. That person, and there's only like three people left out of the 10 people in the photo. You're like, what? When
Yeah.
did this happen?
Yeah. It's so my uncle passed away and he was one of three. So he had an older sister, it was him, and he had a younger sister. And
Mm,
his youngest sister had come to the funeral.
mm.
And she's the only surviving sibling,
Wow. Okay. I was gonna say
right?
what happened with the other. Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so she was there, and I had met her once before. We had like 10 years ago when before PK and I were even married. Me and PK had like lunch with them. And I was just like, I gave her like a big hug, and I was like, I'm so sorry for your loss. And I was just like, it must be so hard being the last sibling. I was like, tell me stories. Like,
And
what
he's
kind of
got
brother was
goosebumps.
he?
And he's got
Yeah,
chicken
like,
skin.
yeah.
Like,
And I mean, but she was like, she's just like lit up. She's like, oh my God, when we were younger, he was the sweetest brother. She's like, I was such a spoiled brat. I was so bossy. I would get him into trouble all the time. And she was just like so proud of her brother. You know what I
mm,
mean?
yeah.
And she's not going to get that from her peers because they're all
Mhm.
mourning in their own way.
Mhm.
And so when like it's interesting because they're not comfortable with their own feelings enough to let the others express their feelings. So if someone starts crying, it's like, no, 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 calm down. He's in a better place. It's okay. And I'm in the back, but cry if you
But
want to. Let
I
your
was gonna
body
say,
release
go do
it.
it. Go ahead. Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
Let
but
it
if you
out.
want to cry, it's okay. It's just like totally kind of squashing their vibe.
Yeah.
And it was hard. It was hard to be like, do I speak up? Do I say this? Am I gonna get yelled at? Because like I said, I do feel like that younger kid and I don't want to be seen as disrespectful.
Ooh, that's a big
That's not
one.
my intention.
Mm.
But I'm also at a point of like, you guys are all getting older. And if I don't connect with you, I'm going to avoid you because I'm not going to mask,
Ooh,
right? Like, I'm not a
that's so
teenager.
true.
Yeah. Because like, I'm not a teenager anymore. I'm not going to hide.
Yeah.
I'm an adult. I have my own children. If
Yeah.
you need to maintain a relationship, if you want me to learn the customs and the rituals and the history, then I need to be able to show up as me.
Yeah.
And I'm not a bad person. I'm
No,
pretty
not at
fucking
all.
fantastic from what I've been told. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. 100%. Yes. 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 For sure. For sure. Yes.
So it was a hard thing. I was having many conversations with my husband. I was like running through different things like, oh, you
Scenarios.
gained so much weight. Oh, why don't you dye your hair? Why don't you bring your kids around? Like just all the possible little cuts that the elders like to kind of give out.
Hmm.
And I had one planned for every single one, and I only had to use two, which was nice.
That's good. Out of like the 50 that you had. That's really good. That's really good on their part, really good on your part. And I
Yeah.
think that's where that falls into play is when you get out of that autopilot, it's that bubble that you mentioned. There's something about, I know I've said this for so long and I will say it forever and ever. I'll be a 90 years old, barely talking. I'll be like this. And I'll still be saying it. When my poops got better,
Hmm.
poopy people left. That's just it. That's
Ah,
just
that's
it.
amazing.
That's just it. Like that's just what happened, right? I don't know if you knew. I think you do know. I think I did tell you that I don't talk to like half of my family.
Hmm.
And it's my entire mom's side, and I know that they listen to this podcast. I know as a fact. I know that they're
I'm
like,
sure they do, honestly. That's right on brand.
yeah, right on brand for them.
No,
Um,
'cause I had so many people come up to me and be like, "Oh, I love your art." I'm like, "Who are you?"
who are
They're like,
you?
"Oh, yeah." Like, they're like, "Oh, I see it on Instagram or whatever." I'm just like, "Oh, okay." So it's like,
But God forbid you actually support. God forbid you give a like. God forbid you share. God forbid. You ain't cheerleading if you're not doing anything, okay? Because here's the thing of the matter is that again, this is a very transparent episode, right? It just is. There's things about life. Not having a business, not being a mom, not any of
Mhm.
that. It's just life stuff, right? Because of our ego, because of this ongoing war that we are very deep into, right? And that we need to kind of get back into like this spiritual stuff of like, okay, like let go, let God. Why? Not just because for your well-being, not just for your own heart, but for
Mhm.
others. Because,
Yeah.
oh my goodness, has it been so eye-opening that when I myself pivoted into this past year or
Mhm.
in 2024, it has helped me so much in also understand why other people do what they do.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
that was like another release. It was another layer of okay, you don't have to be on autopilot. These are the things, Jar, that you've been doing because you thought that these people were going to comment. They were going to comment on your hair. I don't know how many people have told me about my hair that my hair is too crazy, that my hair does not look elegant at all, that my like yeah, I've had bosses, I've had family members, I've had people like they're like, your hair's so messy. Like, there's no
Mhm.
structure to your hair. And I'm like, I know that. There is no structure. I know this.
Right.
This is what curly hair means. You have no structure. The structure is the curl. That's it. You know, that's the structure, okay? But there's so many things that are said on the exterior. And exactly
Mhm.
like how you mentioned, like we literally sit there and we plan. We plan what we're going to say. And that
Yeah.
is good. It's good on one side because it's very human. It's very human
Mhm.
for to want to know what is going to happen when something bad happens, right? It's
Yeah.
like I want that. Everybody, right? Like during any grand thing that you're doing, if you plan a vacation, okay, if this happens, then we'll have the first aid kit with us. We'll have this, we'll have that, right? Like we
Right.
all do it, right? But nothing is better than to have it in your back pocket as to what when you're like, no, like I know where I belong, I know why I belong here, right? Coming back to like if you want to connect with me now, or else we're not connecting.
Right. But and I think that's one of the beautiful things is like, yeah, some people threw me off. I was like, oh, like I had no idea. But I actually like I have two other uncles that kind of like follow and like message me every now and then. And I know they like support me and I know they're reading or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I hear like a difference in language. Like in
Mm-hmm.
vernacular when I'm get like around the adults. Like my aunt was talking about childhood trauma. Like they're talking about these things, and it's just like, okay, they may not be talking to me about it per se, but they're listening.
Yes.
And again, my intentions are pure. I'm not over here to lambast anyone about anything.
Yes.
I've been working on my healing, like
Yeah,
I'm a
for
little,
sure.
the fire's a little spark, but I'm like, okay, well, at least they're listening because it just gives us an opportunity to connect before they pass. Because with technology, with how society is constructed now, it's so different with how they grew up and how connected everyone was, and just the amount of like distance and stress for everyone, right? Like we used to get
Yes.
together all the time.
Yes.
I haven't seen these people in 10 years. Like
Yep.
that's such a big difference in one generation.
Yep.
For me, it's like, oh, what's going to happen to my children? Like, how are they going to connect to their family, their roots, their people? How are they going to understand where they come from?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so finding the people who get it and who will learn the language, evolve to keep them safe and nurture them into who they need to be versus trying to pound into them who they should be, which is a little bit of what we got growing up just because they didn't know better.
I
There was
actually just
fear,
I
like,
had this conversation earlier today with my sister-in-law actually about,
yeah.
when our kids like, sometimes my kids they're like, me, I don't want to get to karate, but then they get to karate and they're like, that was so great. Oh my gosh. And they're like so excited because they got to like break boards today and
Right.
and they do this like little 7-step thing. And at the end, they do this little twirl thing.
Hmm.
And I know that in their minds, when they do that little twirl thing I know they're like, oh my God, I am so cool. I know it. I know it because you can tell in their faces. Okay. Um,
I
But
love
karate is something that is so helpful for them. It is definitely teaching them responsibility.
that. Hmm.
Any sport will do that, right? Anything that we're like dedicated to will do that, right? Um, is teaching them definitely like respect. One of my favorite things about karate as a parent is that they actually clean up after they break the boards and use the weapons. They clean
Right.
off, and then during, and after each class they repeat like the life skill that they're learning for that week, right? So they go three
Yeah.
times a week, 30 minutes at a time. And they just kind of like repeat that, right? So like if last week was like honesty, then they build up on that, right? So
Hmm.
do the right hard thing, right? Always tell the
Yeah.
truth, even if it is difficult, right? And
Absolutely.
you see these things that kind of come into play in our day-to-day life. You see those things. The reason why I brought this up is because there are things that in our childhood we were told just keep going because it's a good thing, right?
Yeah.
Just keep going, or go to school or go to university because XYZ, right?
Yeah.
It just is good, right? Like as I'm told, it's just good. It's just good, right?
Yeah.
I do something that my mom would be like, because I said so. Okay, why? Because that's not good enough for
Right.
me, right? So, like, it's those kinds of things that we really sit here and we're like, well, I have chronic symptoms, or I have this and I have that. I had such bad social anxiety from so much stuff that was happening, like in the Romanian circle, in the things that, like, I know as a fact that, like, now I know because I've seen the true colors of people. But back
Right.
then, it was just hunches. It was just like in my head and it
Yeah.
was ruminating in my head on what people were saying or what they were doing or what they were thinking because I grew up in that household where it was like, just keep going, just keep going.
Hmm.
Gymnastics was not one of them. I will tell you this. My dad asked me almost every week. Every week. He would ask me, "Are you sure you keep wanting to do this?" I'd like get rips the size of quarters on my hands. I'd like dislocate my shoulder. I like really bad bruise my tailbone where I couldn't even walk or sit for like months. Like just so many things, and it was like, "Are you sure you want to keep going?" But there was other things in life that, within gymnastics, you just keep going, you just push through.
Hmm.
And I think that's the thing, is learning how to push through. And again, it's like way more gentle and way more simple than we think. And so for me personally, how this ties in and how I see my healing journey is that w- I I don't want it to ever get so complicated where it feels like I don't know which way to run to make myself feel better.
Yeah.
I want
Absolutely.
to I want to know exactly what I need to do when. So it brings it back full circle to that point of like, if this happens, then here's the scenario that I made up in my own head, and here's
Mhm.
the responses that I'm going to have. And that's what you were doing, and you only had to use two of them, which is good. But again, I think that's lifing at the end of the day. And I think those points in life is a great opportunity to actually practice exactly what we've been building up for.
Absolutely. I mean, it is life and it is like just a general scale, but it's also a trauma response, right?
Absolutely.
To plan and prepare to different degrees and severities is a trauma response because you are protecting yourself
100%.
at the end of the day. Having
100%.
a basic plan for worst case scenario, yes, that's just, being a planner. So we do want to acknowledge and, call that what that is. But
Mhm.
I do want to say that, like, the other thing we saw growing up is that people wouldn't openly talk about things out of fear of judgment or shame. And it's because there was like a level of insecurity there. And so when you journal or when you heal and when you work on yourself and you know yourself, right? Like that's like know thyself. When you know yourself, no one can judge you because you know
Right.
who you are. And so
Right.
I knew one of the questions I was gonna get is like, oh, why didn't you bring the girls?
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it's a very loaded question just because they don't
Question.
fully understand my family life, my family history, just like all the things.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought about it and I was just like, you know what? I'm going to tell them, it's like, well, they're 7. They have a speech delay.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how to help them process grief or explain death at this age.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to cause fear and confusion when they're not ready for it.
Mm-hmm.
And I said that to whoever asked me, and the level of understanding and connection and empathy was there.
Mm-hmm.
Versus like, oh no, it's just easier or da, 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 like the easier response, right? The
Mm-hmm.
easier response is like, oh, they have school or oh, the tickets were too expensive. Da, 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 da. And it's just like all those things are true. They do have school. The tickets were hella expensive.
Right.
However, how do you explain who this person was? What is happening to a 7-year-old who doesn't have full vocabulary yet? You know what I mean? And so
Yes.
they were just like, oh, okay, wow, right. It's so great that you think about those things and da 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 da. And so it was hard because it's kind of sharing like a vulnerable thing, right? Like it's sharing like how you
Yes.
parent, it's sharing how you
Yes.
think about things. And then some people are just like, oh, they'll be fine. Like, look at us, da da da. And it's like, well, I'm not fine, so I'm trying to do better.
That is that. So leading off with, because I was talking about this with my sister-in-law, that's exactly the point that we got to as well, is that when we get to do those things, so we build up these things, right? The first layer is like acknowledging, okay, there's a lot of stuff happening that I'm actually not okay with. Cool. The second
Right.
thing is now we're actually going to do something, whether it's therapy, whether it's a mentor, whether it's, right?
Hmm.
Like we're going to have a source of help, a source of community, right? That is outside of your expertise, if you will, right?
Right.
Because we are expertise of our own bodies. I do believe that.
Absolutely.
We know what's happening in our bodies. I think
If
I
we pay
think
attention.
say that again.
If we pay attention.
If we pay attention, right? And that
Yeah.
takes practice within itself too, right?
Right.
But I think we still are really good at it. Like there's things that like we can do or we can say, but deep down there's like a little tiny whisper voice and sometimes she's super annoying. She's like, "Can you stop doing that to me?" You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And we're like, "Zip it, stop, stop,
Yeah.
stop, stop." Right?
Yeah.
So we kind of gotta get into that voice. But I think ultimately doing the right hard thing is exactly how you said, we need to call things exactly what they are.
Yeah.
Because how are you going to get there? How are you going to actually come to the conclusion? I say this to everybody when I do my connection calls and my kickoff calls, when I'm like one on one, when I do my trainings, when I'm, just doing anything like chronic illness related. I'm having a
Hmm.
conversation with, the waitress at the restaurant, like whatever, I always say, like, you need to come to your own conclusion on what you need to do.
Yeah.
I'm not here to sit here and like, um, persuade you.
Hmm. Absolutely. Like so my mom is one of 3 sisters and she's the
Mhm.
youngest, and my dad is the youngest of 8. So they have lived big, big lives before I even came into existence. There's just so much history and drama, right?
Mm, mm,
And at some point when everyone gets together, things start, people start getting a little emotional, they get a little triggered, and they want to talk about things and share their side.
for sure.
And my boundary is like, I don't want to know. I don't
Hmm.
want to carry it.
Hmm.
I don't want to have to take sides. And it's also beyond me, right? Like
Mm,
this is beyond me. Like your whole existence is beyond me. And so I looked at my eldest aunt because she was like, "Do you want to know?" And I know it was a challenge,
right.
but I know it
Right.
was a challenge from like an emotional state of just like, let me show you how wronged I've been, right? Which is
Yes.
fair. Like those
Which
are your feelings, boo. Like,
I was just gonna say that, which is fair.
yeah, I
I
was
was
like,
just
you
gonna say
feel
that, which is
wrong?
fair. We all want, coming back to this conversation that I just had with my sister-in-law, we
Yeah,
all want, and I actually think it is a need, I think, to have someone as the soundboard. But
right.
are you talking from a point, as we say in Romanian, are you putting salt on the wound, or are you talking from a
Are we
wounded,
stitching this bitch up?
stitched up? Yeah,
Absolutely.
exactly.
Like,
Exactly.
am
Or
I getting the
pitch.
alcohol to sanitize this? Or are we getting a rusty knife? What, like, let's go, right? And that's
Yeah.
exactly what it was. Because I was just
Yeah.
like, and I told her too, I was like, listen, I was like, before you start, I was like, I don't want to know. I was like, and I told her, I was like, between healing my own stuff, raising my daughters, and loving my mother,
Mm.
I'm tapped out.
Tapped out.
At this point, I do not have room for more right now.
This
I'm
is
at
why,
capacity.
Krishna, in 3 months, you made such significant improvement, though, right there. Right there. And people that are gonna listen, they're gonna be like, Jada, how the heck did you just jump from that to that? Because the same person that just said, I'm tapped out in
Hmm.
doing this, I don't need to hear your crap. I don't need to hear
Right.
your stuff right now. Right now.
Absolutely.
I love you. I respect you. I bless and release it because
Yeah.
I am tapped out. As my husband says, we have two hands. Whatever we hold with these two hands, that's what we hold. Stop thinking that you're an octopus. That's what my husband, you're not an octopus. You
I
have
love
two
that.
hands. And I'm like,
I love
okay, I get
that.
it.
That's
Mhm.
cute. We need to, we're gonna have to come back to the octopus later. I have ideas. But I told her, I was like, because so my mom's dad died when my mom was 5.
Okay.
And then my mom's mom died when my mom was 16 from a
Wow.
brain tumor, right? Like those are,
Wow.
and the dad died in a car accident.
Things.
My grandfather died in a car accident. These are
Yeah.
traumatic losses in a
Right.
time where there's no internet, mental health
Right.
services aren't common, all these things, right? And so I looked at all three of them and I was like, I will never understand what you have been through. I was like, the lives that you guys have lived, the things that you have endured and persevered, I will never fully understand that. But look at how far you've come. Look at all that you've accomplished. How do you want to move forward?
Mm-hmm.
Because we just laid this man down to rest,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's like, okay, you've been wronged. Do we want to just separate them and keep that distance? Do we want to be cordial or are we trying to reconnect?
Yes.
And whatever you decide, do it fully.
Do it fully.
Because
And
there's
that's
also
so
this whole thing
hard.
of like, there's all this, like, oh, well, they should do this first. And like, no, like if you're trying
No.
to reconnect, you call and you reconnect. If you're
Hmm.
trying to keep it distant, don't bring it up.
That part is so hard. I myself, you know this. Maybe in a later time, I will, when I am
But you're
mentally
also new. Like you're at the beginning of your journey
I'm the
ish.
beginning of my journey, but there is
Yeah.
a part which I know later when my nervous system has is at a safe place to talk about it. There is right now, Krishna, you know, but there is things in my life and in the behind the scenes, if you will, of my personal life that is like it's very hard to just there's a grief in that. There's a grief in
Absolutely.
letting people, not inviting your sister to Thanksgiving dinner. There's a grief in not talking to your cousin that you used to do sleepovers with. Like
Yeah,
there's a big grief
absolutely.
in that. That something happens with your children. You're like, oh my God, me and my cousin, and then your brain goes, like zip it because your kids don't even know that person. Zip it.
Yeah.
And there's that grief that pops in. So again, now we have grief. Now we have immune system down. Now we have all these things happening in our body. And then we're here like, but I eat healthy or but I do this or but I do that, but I da 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 da. It's never one thing. Just how the body is never, it's just never one thing. Look how many
Yeah.
things that we just talked about on
Right.
doing the right hard thing.
Absolutely. And for you, I want to give you credit, Jenna, because what you're doing is you're processing,
Hmm.
right? This is
Yeah,
something new,
you
you're
have to.
processing. And well, you will be processing, and you're processing to people you feel safe with and that will
Yes.
understand you. You are
Yes.
not doing a whole social campaign to convert people to your side,
Yes. Yes. 100%.
right? So
Yeah.
that's what like that's kind of the energy that I get from the elders of just like, let
Mm-hmm.
me show you why I'm right
Mm,
versus this is my hurt.
mm.
Like, damn, that sucks. That does hurt, right? So yeah, it's just a
You,
matter of like really figuring out your core values, what's important to you, and how you want to live. And I want to live a deeply connected and full life that's not dependent on smokes and mirrors, right? Like, I
mm,
don't want to be sold deceitful things. And there's so much that has come out and has been coming out about what is marketed to us, what is sold to us, how things are presented, even what research is available and has been actually done for the female body,
Right.
what doctors actually know. And so for me, journaling gives me an idea, it gives me a space to daily check in with myself and really listen. What's hurting? What's coming up? What have I been thinking about? What time of year is it? Because you just never know. Like you said, there's so much going on. I think sometimes not sometimes, we are talked to and marketed to like we're stupid,
Yes.
like we're cows being
That's
herded.
that's one of the things that I actually that I it was almost like a aha moment very recently. I was talking to another entrepreneur and I was like, "Do you understand that I get from 5 minutes ago, I got what you were already trying to sell me?"
Right.
And that I think is also a thing too about like nervous system and all this stuff okay, I just want you to continue. Sorry. I have
No.
interrupted you, but I just had this conversation with someone.
No, I mean it's true though. It's not even a matter of like, oh, I already got it. Yeah, okay, yes, some people need more nurturing. They need more time to process and take in information, socioeconomic status, accessibility, all the things, right? Like yes, yes, yes. However, when you I mean, I'm sure you're familiar with this, like when you go into like coaching programs and like best marketing strategies, it's like niche down, tell your people what they want, da da da. Like, bitch, I know what I want.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
know what I want.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is when I wasn't listening to myself, I would let someone else tell me what I wanted, and I was still unhappy.
Bingo. That's where supplements and pills come in. That's what happens. That's why supplement companies they have surpassed in 2024 income versus pill intake and pill income, if you will, of big pharma.
Wild. And to be clear and very transparent with people, I want to lose weight, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I want to be slimmer. I don't have like an insane goal. I don't want to go on Ozempic or anything like that. But like if I wanted to lose weight like that, yeah, I could go do that.
Mm-hmm.
But I've been on the yo-yos. I've done
Yep.
high intensity interval training. I've done keto. I've done this. I've done that. And all of it felt so stressful and all of it
Mm-hmm.
felt so traumatic. When I
Because
started
it
doing
is.
somatic work, that's when I realized that high intensity interval training was putting my body into a trauma response. And so no matter how hard I would go work out, I would not lose a pound. I would gain weight
Mm-hmm.
because my body was like, "Oh, we're freaking out right now," because it was putting my body in a state it used to be in as a child when I was fucking traumatized.
Yep.
And so I'm doing the hard thing right now of being patient and kind to my body in the shape and form it is now while trying to love it and figure out what it needs and how it needs it. And so like I do yoga and Pilates and low impact workout for body movement, and I'm still not losing weight, but I'm getting stronger, I'm eating better, I'm sleeping better, right? Like the other benefits of that. And then I have to keep going. Like it can't be this magic 6 week, 3 month program when you're trying to make a full change like this and you're undoing decades worth of trauma, maybe even
Yes.
generations worth, depending on what you're uncovering.
Yes. Yes. I read somewhere the opposite of gosh, uh not body positivity. No. Read my brain, Krishna.
Body neutrality,
Say that again?
body neutrality.
No, that is the answer though. That's the answer.
Okay. So it's the
Um,
opposite of body positivity. Body positivity is like, I'm amazing, I'm beautiful no matter what, da da da. Body
there's so
neutrality,
body neutral. Yeah, it's body neutrality that is the answer and the opposite of that. And that how most of us are stuck there because of
right?
our external things that we've been taught that is success, that looks good for us, that looks good to our family, that looks good in the mirror, that da, 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 da. Yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I'm agreeing with you. I'm like, yes, yes.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. So that's the answer is body neutrality. Um,
Absolutely.
I lost the last episode of 2024 was how I lost 14 pounds this year, and I think I ate more carbs and I just ate more than I have in a long time. I just feel
Right.
like I ate. Okay. I
It was
ate.
probably more joy and more gratitude for what you were eating versus the stress and anxiety of like, this is good food, this is bad food, all that noise that takes away your peace.
It was Krishna, and like I said, I did an entire episode about it. So for the listeners, if you want to go back and listen to that episode and be like, wait, what? Like, what is this? There was a lot of things that I stuffed down that was not food related. Okay, because people when they think food related is like, oh, so you stuffed food. No, I actually am the opposite. I will severely undereat when I'm stressed
Mm-hmm.
out and have a trauma
Same.
response. I don't overeat or binge. I do the opposite because I had a very poor food relationship prior to starting this health journey, and I was like borderline bulimic for quite
Mhm.
some time. And then that led to severe depression. And so with that being said, I had the opposite. And so what was happening to me is that I was still eating, but there was so much suppressed emotions because of my marital situations. And
Mhm.
so I talk about that in that episode because I think people need to understand like there are things happening all the time with people. And again, this is where I will forever say this. There are hills that I will die on. It's just like which hill am I going to die on? But this is another one is that like not that social media thing that or whatever you want to put on social media is like real versus Instagram or like social media versus Facebook,
Yeah.
whatever, right? Like personally, that's a you thing. That's not a me thing because if you are only posting your highlights and that kind of stuff, then that's
Mhm.
why that reality is real for you because that's
Right.
what you're doing. But I believe that there are a lot of transparencies and coming back to this is where are you sharing your insight from? Where are you sharing? Are you sharing it from, are you putting salt on the wound or are you stitching it up type of
Yeah,
deal is how you're sharing it. And then also there's a time and a place for things to be shared.
absolutely. And a
Time
person. You gotta know your
yes.
people.
You got to know your people and you got
Yeah.
to know yourself. Coming back to that, you got to know yourself. So when your nervous system, just like how I just said, there's things that are going on in my personal life that's like, I know that I will tell this community. I know. I know there will
Mhm.
be a podcast episode. I know when my nervous system, when I have processed it, when I feel comfortable with it, and when my nervous system feels very safe to do so. Because right now, it ain't it.
All
Right.
right.
So there's things that happen, and this is why it feels like it's like Instagram versus real life and things like that. But there are so many things out there in the world. Coming back to this 30-minute thing that I listened to this morning, gosh, this could not have happened on the most like aligned day ever. Is that that's the war, is that there's so much over information. There's so much ego feeding into this stuff, right? And there's so much of that, the autopilot, just like, oh,
Yeah.
yep, well, that's just how we do things. Like, what do you mean that's just how you do things? Did I tell you the thing about the ham in the oven? Did I tell you that?
Yes, 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 you did. You did.
Okay,
It's
so
funny you said that because at the funeral, my uncle, who was finishing up the eulogy, he shared a similar story. And it was basically don't be ritualistic,
mm,
understand the meaning behind the ritual. And
yeah.
then he shared like a little Vedic story, but it reminded me of your pan story of just like, oh, we always use this pan. Why? Well, because it was the only one that fit. Like it was nothing more than that.
So yeah, so the
Yeah.
story, do you want to say the story?
No, you go for it.
Okay, okay. So the story is that uh there's a mom who ends up being a grandma, but she's like the first generation that cuts the bottom, if you will, of the ham and she puts it on this tray and she puts it inside the oven, right? And then her daughter grows up and she ends up doing it. And then the granddaughter, what would it be of like
Yeah.
the first woman that did that, right? The granddaughter asked, why do you do that? And she's like, and her mom goes, well, that's just how it's been done, thinking that cutting this bottom half of this ham is going to
Right.
somehow like magically make the ham taste better. Does it cook fully? Right? Like who knows what is in someone's brain, right? Their thoughts,
Mhm.
right? We never know. As so she got to asking, then that granddaughter became a mom and she's like, I'm not going to cut this ham. So it turns out that they actually were cutting the bottom of the ham because the ham was not going to fit in the pan that they were using.
for that oven. Yeah,
for
exactly.
that oven. So, and
Yeah.
obviously the daughter she had a bigger pan. She had a
Hmm.
bigger oven that could fit a whole ham in. So, like, why are you cutting things up? Why are we complicating things? One, because it's
Absolutely.
autopilot. Two, because there's this war, the spiritual war that's going on with us, and we're like, well, whatever, external wins, fine, like stuff like that. So, do the right hard thing for you, and on that priority of things that you need to do, really sit with that. Krishna, where can people find your journals? And also, a little side note, a little fun little, like, kind of like rant, if you will. I've been doing journaling for such a long time, and I wrote this like mini story when I was 8 years old, Krishna, and it was based on like gymnastics because I was
Hmm.
still head over heels, for gymnastics. I was like, oh my God, I went to a competition. So I made a little story about that. That was at 8 years old. I still have the journal that I wrote. That was the journal that I wrote all the
Hmm.
things, because I too was like one of those people that if I wrote it, it was like my mom didn't never read that, so I never was like, oh, I'm scared to say how it was. I was
Right.
scared that it once I put it on paper, it was real. That was my
Oh, at that young of an age?
oh yeah. Oh yeah. You're talking to
Wild.
someone that was like severely traumatized her first 3 years of my life. I'm convinced
I
that
know
like
that, but I'm just like,
low key, I'm convinced. Like, I know my birthday is like a question mark, but like, I feel like on a cellular level, I'm much older than I am because of that.
right,
It's science there. That trauma
right.
really, like, the cells really do mature. So there was things like that. So I still have the journal that I got as a gift from someone, actually. Um, and I still have it. And I actually very recently read it to my husband, and I read
Oh,
these deep stuff. And he goes, you should probably get into writing again. And I was like, that's what you get from that? I was like, what? And he's like, well, it's not things that like I don't know, which is also like, I'm not a daddy's girl. I'm not a mama's girl. I'm a husband's girl. Okay.
absolutely,
My husband,
absolutely.
like, I will come running to you, and I know your arms are so like warm and big, and I'm just so excited to like cry in your arms. I'm excited to share with you all the things. That's me, right? Like,
Hmm.
you will the to the women that are like, let's bash our husbands. I'm like,
Oh
bless it,
yeah, no.
bless and
I'm a-
release you, because I can't do that.
Yeah.
But again, so that was that. And I just want you to know, Krishna, I don't think I've said this to you. But through Diana and like learning how doing things that we actually enjoy, and really avoiding the burnout in doing the mom life, doing the business life, doing
Yeah.
all these things, taking care of clients, taking care of you. It's really just doing more of what you really enjoy doing. I started
Hmm.
doing that again.
Oh, I love that. Oh my God, I'm so excited.
And I think that's what ended up translating into Substack.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my God, I'm so excited about Substack. I just
Yeah.
started my Substack, but I do want to leave the listeners with one little bit of advice of
Yes,
just when
please.
we're trying to do something new. I was listening to a podcast with Tim Ferriss and Elizabeth Gilbert, and they were saying how it may have been them. It may have been someone else. I could be wrong. I'm
Okay.
sorry if I am. But they mentioned how whenever we try to do something, we add more instead of do less.
Oh,
And
can you repeat that one time? One more
so
time?
whenever we're trying to change something or accomplish or attain something, we tend to do more instead of doing less. And I
Just
think
snaps
about
all
this
over.
more and
Yeah.
more. I think about this more and more with just like our generation and our parents' generation and what we're talking about, like rituals and just all that comes with that. And I feel like we are a generation that needs to like escape, that
Ooh,
needs to be
ooh,
distracted.
100%. Yep.
And I get the trauma response of that all, but I think the hard thing is to not escape and to not let yourself remain distracted for too long
Hmm.
because it's taking more from you than you realize. Um,
That felt like a really big hug. That, like, it may have been hard to come to that hug. Does that make sense? That's what that felt like. I was like, I know
yeah.
I need this hug. Oh, okay, all right. That was a good hug, right?
Yeah, because when you do less, and you take things off your plate, the first things that you ideally the first things you want to take off are the distractions and the noise and the shoulds, right? And then you're left with the wants and the needs and the values. When you take all the distractions out, you can get to like the core of who you are, and you'll have more time for joy. You'll have more time to write. You'll have more time to. There's so many people who are like, "Oh, I wish I knew how to sew. Oh, I wish I knew how to knit. Oh," and I feel the same way. I wish I knew how to play the piano. I really want to learn how to play a sewing machine. I could if I spent less time on social media. That
Boom.
is a fact.
Boom.
If I spent less time binging shit on TV, on these various subscriptions that we're paying for, I bet you if we canceled them, you could probably buy a sewing machine, buy a class, and do the whole, and to me, like those are the right hard things,
Yep.
right? Like, just really like prioritizing where you're spending your time and your money. I was talking to a friend of mine. She was like, "Oh, do you watch, XYZ show?" And I was like, "Oh no, I don't pay to be distracted."
Ooh. Ooh. I don't pay to be distracted.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's enough free things out there for me to stay distracted. Like I'm good. I don't give
Hey.
anyone my money to distract me more from my
Yes.
values, from my needs, from my dreams, from what I need to be doing. So that's the last thing I wanted to leave the listeners with. You can find me at serenademysoul.com. That's where my journals are. I'm on Instagram at serenademysoul. And I mean, honestly, just go to Instagram and you'll get all the links for Substack and all the little fun things that I'm doing. And I hope to see everyone there.
Yes, thank you, Krishna, for being here. And I want to say one more time, may your uncle rest in peace. And I
Thank you,
hope that
Laura.
there is a lot of inner peace for you. And I hope that you go through these next days, weeks, months, just knowing that you know he is watching over you.
Absolutely.
You are going to feel him, you are going to see him in so many different ways. And I'm excited and I'm very honored to be part of your life. And I'm honored to have a seat at your table that you are able to share these things with me. I know that you are just like me. Not everybody has the right to that stuff, and
Right.
exactly like how I said earlier, it's right time, right place, and I'm honored that I'm one of those people, Krishna. So thank you so much for being
Same.
here.
Of
Oh,
course. Thank you for having me. When you can really step into who you are, you're gonna find the people who love you for who you are. And
100%.
I never I'll be honest, when I first started healing, I was like, that's a bunch of bullshit. Like y'all fucking lying. You know?
Mm-hmm.
And it's the
Yeah,
best thing ever.
best
Like
thing
the
ever.
people who I have in my corner now, like they are my ride or die.
Yeah. Lifers. Lifers.
Love you. Thank you.
Love you. Thank you guys for coming to this part of the episode, and thank you for sticking around because oh my gosh, that was like golden nuggets right there. That was so beautiful. You guys check out the show notes, and please, if you are into journaling and you want to process a lot of heavy things, and maybe mentorship or maybe having therapy is not your vibe right now, that's a
Yeah.
great introduction to releasing a lot of things and really helping you reduce a lot of the symptoms that you don't even know that are happening because we're just holding a lot of this trauma and a lot of the words and the thoughts, and so being able to release that on pen and paper. Yes, it is scary, like I said, there you could be like me and that means that things are real. You could be like the person that told me that, wow, like it's kind of scary to think that someone else may read it or things like that. But that's a great thing. If writing's like how my son is not into writing. So, like if you're like that and writing is not your thing, another version of that is you can voice memo yourself, leave voice memos, record stuff for
Right.
yourself. You don't have to ever listen to them again, right? But it's just verbalizing things, getting things out. Just get them out, right? It's hard at first, but do the right hard thing. Thank you so much, Krishna, once again for being here. And you guys, I will see you guys on the next episode. Until then, rest but don't quit.